Hey, my name's Ed. Welcome to my channel. I make, modify and mend things, and this week I'm going to be mending my Sealey MightyMIG 130 XT Mark II turbo welder. So I went to do some welding recently and the torch on my welder fell apart. The swan neck was kind of like, the nozzle was kind of like moving around and then it just fell off completely. And it turns out the threads in this little block are completely knackered. Now I've already replaced the swan neck on this machine once before, and it's absolutely ancient. I wouldn't be surprised as this is almost 30 years old. So I'm not surprised. It's done a lot of welding in its time. So I bought this cheap replacement torch. It's like a whole assembly. It's a torch and the lead all in one. So I'm just going to replace the whole lot. This cost me, I think, less than 20 quid, so I'm not expecting great things, but it's going to work better than this absolutely destroyed one. So I do want to retain the sheath, the old sheath, because it feels much better quality. The one on the new torch is essentially, it feels like a big piece of heat shrink tubing, which feels rubbish. So I'm going to try and retain this old one and then put the new internals in the old sheath. So yeah, let's get going. So the first job is to take the cover off. There's these screws here, which are fairly obvious. So I'm just going to take all these out and see what happens. Okay, so this is the lead from the torch, and this is where it comes into the machine. Now this is the wire feed mechanism. I'm going to need to take that off to get to whatever comes through here. So I'm going to do that now. And then I'm going to need to disconnect the cables. And I think some of the cables, I don't want to touch too much in here because I don't know, it's not plugged in, but I don't know if there's any capacitors. So I'm going to have to trace the cables that come into here and disconnect them. I'm just going to take out any screws I can see. These two look like they're going to do something. It looks like this is a cover. This whole machine could do with a clean, really. I probably need to take the wire out, actually. I'm going to do that. So the trick to disconnecting the wire is you don't want it to unspool itself. Ask me how I know. So there's various holes in this flange. So you need to put a kink in the cable and then run it through a hole, or run it through the hole and then put a kink in it so that it doesn't unravel the whole spool. I'm going to let the tension off. Right off, and then pull the wire through. So now we can see a bit better where the cord comes in. I really don't know what to call this. Trunking, I guess. You can see this is the liner for the wire. So the welding wire comes through here. And then there's various electric cables, and the gas hose goes off that way over this, well, through this wall into the electrical side of the welder. So I need to trace those and disconnect them. So there's actually a load of cable ties holding this lot together. I'm going to cut these to make it a bit easier. I don't actually have any tiny snips here, so this is a little bit dodgy because I could nick the cables, but I'm going to be as careful as I can. Doesn't help that my knife is so blunt. Okay, so now I can see there's 3 wires that come out. This is the trigger wire. When you press the button on the trigger, it tells the wire feed motor to start running, and it tells the welder to put current to the main wire, to the positive welding electrode, I guess. And that is this one here. So that's going to be disconnected. God, this has probably never been apart ever since it's made. So that's that one. Then there's going to be, this is the gas hose. And then the main welding, the current wire, is this big thick one here. So that goes to here, and there's a little nut, so I'm just going to undo that nut. And that's a 10mm nut. Big washer. There we go. So that's all 3 cables free. I'm going to feed them through here one at a time. And now you can see, oh yeah, so the wire feeds, the wire sheath is actually, it was just resting in there I think, so that's what come out. So now I can just pull this lot through, and that should be the old torch disconnected. So this is the new torch, and as I said, I want to keep this original hard sheath if I can, versus this soft piece of heat shrink like tubing. So the first thing to do with this one is to take the new torch apart, because I want to see if I can, the gas tube on the old torch is actually longer, and if anything I'd rather keep the longer gas tube because that has to go to my gas bottle, and the longer the better, to be honest. So I'm going to see if this new torch will accept the old gas pipe. So after a little bit of a fight, I think the old gas pipe is going to fit on the new torch. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove all of these bits and pieces from the new sheath and put them, see if I can feed them through the old sheath. This might be harder than it looks. Okay, so this seems to be the best method. There we go. Oh, I don't know whether this is going to be a massive mistake. Feeding it down the new one might be impossible. So this is the gas tube. That's the one that I'm going to be retaining the old one of. Handy to have a spare piece though. So I'm going to keep that to one side. Now, interestingly, the new torch has 2 wires for the trigger. The old one only had 1. I did do some Googling when I first received this in the post, and all I need to do is attach one of these cables to the existing connection, and the other one needs to be connected to this big welding cable. But I'll do that in the machine once I've connected this new torch up. So now I need to do the same with the old one. But I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull the gas tube through first, because that's going to give a bit more space, which will hopefully make it easier to do this with this one. And interestingly, the old one has actually got a sheath around the gas tube to give it a bit of protection when it's inside here. Oh, it's really tight. Ah, no, the protection was just here, where it bends. Yeah, I think it's going to be way harder to get all these threaded through this old, stiffer conduit. Conduit, that's the word I've been looking for, conduit. I can already tell this is going to be way more awkward. that terminal was definitely put on after the cable was fed through. So the new one is almost never going to go through. I'm wondering if I can just leave that big thick welding cable. The new one is thicker, which has to be better, right? Regrettably, I'm going to give up on the idea of using the old conduit. It is a bit stronger, but it's also smaller. And this new main current cable is thicker on the new torch, which gives me a bit more confidence. So I think I'm going to opt to use the thicker cable, and I'm just going to have to thread it all back through this sheath or conduit. But I am going to use the old gas tube because it's longer than the new one. So I might have had to do this anyway. I'm trying to tell myself that I haven't just taken this all out of this conduit for no reason. So I'm going to connect the gas first and then attempt to thread the whole lot through at the same time, I think. I think that's the way to go about it. I mean, I don't really know what I'm doing. I just make this stuff up as I go along. And it's kind of what I do with all my projects, to be honest. Let's see how easy or difficult that's going to be. Okay, so now I've got that gas pipe connected. The easiest way to do this is to pull the wires through rather than push. So what I'm going to do is use this old piece of cable, tie it to the end of these, feed this through first, because this is much smaller than this bunch, and then tie it to the end, and then pull all these ones through using this one. So I'm going to quickly set that up. So the theory is I tie these ones to this and then just pull this back through. So I'm going to tape this piece to all this lot. I do need to make sure they're all roughly the same length. So annoyingly, the two trigger wires are a little bit shorter than the others. Although I did pull the trigger back a little bit to give me extra length. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tape them all together here. And I've got to tape them in such a way that they are still going to all fit down that conduit and that I don't lose any, they don't pull out. So I want to give this the straightest shot possible. So I've chucked it over one of the rafters, and now I'm just going to pull from the bottom. And okay, that is not as easy as I was hoping. I wish my arms were longer. Right, so now the gas tube is poking through. I can use that to pull as well, and that really helps actually. So it seems to be when the conduit bunches up, that's when it really struggles. Right, my little plug of tape is coming through. This is all rucked up here, and I'm fairly sure that is part of what's making this quite difficult. So what I might do now is put the torch back together and then sort out the other end. So let's do that. So now I need to work out where that trigger was. I know I should have paid more attention when I took this to pieces. So after some faffing, which is way too boring to put on camera, I've got it all sitting sort of right. I had to bend one of the terminals on the switch to get it to sit in a way where I don't think it's going to get trapped and cut. I'm going to have to rewire this at the welder end anyway, because the old trigger only had one cable coming off it. And I could have wired in one of these wires directly to the main welding cable here, but I'm actually going to do it at the opposite end at the welder. I want to convert this welder to Eurotorch anyway, so this is only going to be a temporary fix. So I can put this back together and then concentrate on the other end. Right, so we're back at the welder end, and I need enough of this cable inside the welder that this main current cable reaches its termination point. So annoyingly, I am going to have to cut back some of this conduit, and also these little control wires for the trigger, they also need to reach in here somewhere, and one of them needs to be terminated to this ring. So I am going to have to cut this back. So I'm going to do that now. I don't have a pair of scissors here, annoyingly. Half my tools are at the boat at the moment, which is super annoying. I'm hoping I can just slit that and then, yeah, good. And this is the sort of reinforcement around the gas tube. And that's actually where it bent around this corner and through this dividing wall before. So I assume that's there just so that this gas cable tube doesn't get rubbed through. So I'm going to feed it all through now, starting with the gas tube. And that just goes through, straight through and out the other side of the welder. The only one which doesn't go through to this side is the wire feed tube, which I'm going to try and feed through this side. Right, so rather annoyingly, I don't have any of my electrical connector tools here, like my crimps and stuff. I have a load of terminals at the boat, along with my crimp pliers, my crimp tool. I don't have any of that here, so this is going to have to be slightly bodge. So I need to connect one of these black trigger wires to here, and the other one needs to be connected to this. So I'm going to trap it under here for now, and I'm going to come back with my crimp tool and a ring terminal, and I'm going to put a proper ring terminal on this one. For now, I'm just going to trap it under and test that it works. I mean, it should do, but you never know. I'm going to use this pair of pliers to crimp this connector on. Well, that's not going to work, clearly. This is super annoying, because I have the proper tools for all of this, but they're at the boat. Let's try that again. There we go. Right. So that goes there. That's reasonably okay. I don't want to say good. It's going to conduct electricity anyway. Right, and then this one. Right, so I'm going to put the... So I've connected, in fact, I'm going to turn that around. that is the main current carrying wire. Now there is a sharp edge here, I want to keep it away from that. Okay, that's not going anywhere. And yeah, so I'm going to trap. Like I said, I'm not happy about this, but I'm going to come back and do it properly. Next time I'm at the boat, I'll pick up some terminals. So I'm going to trap that cable in there. This is a proof of concept. I mean, this is definitely going to work because I've looked it up. There we go. And what I'm going to do is cable tie these cables together and then just feed the gas tube through. Then I can cable tie this lot back up, which is exactly how it was. And I've got these very cool fluoro cable ties which I'm going to use. So while fixing this welder, I'm also pimping it up. Pimp my welder. Really, I should test this before I do this, but I mean, if it doesn't work, I'll cut them all off again. Right, I'm going to leave them long. There's a cover on this, so you ain't going to see them anyway. Time to do the other side. So this is the tube, or the cable, I suppose you could also call it. It feels a little bit like bicycle gear cable to me, where the wire is fed through. And that comes through, and it's supposed to stop just here, just past those wire feed rollers. So I'm going to snip this off about here because it's held in this little indentation. So I'm going to snip it just at the end of that little bit. And if it's anything like bicycle gear cable, it's probably going to crush. I don't have a decent pair of side cutters here. Again, everything good I own is on the boat. No, it didn't crush. Perfect. So that is going to go there. And now I can put the little plate back on, the support plate. In fact, what I might do is sort out this mess first. Okay, I've trimmed that back a little bit. I do want a little bit here to trap in the bracket. I want to give this blue one the straightest shot possible because you want the wire to feed as well as it can. It's not in the ideal place at the moment, if I'm honest. And I don't want to trap any of the other bits either. Right, that's looking better. So let's get that bracket on there. Is that going to give me a problem? That might be a bigger diameter than the other one. I think it is. Okay, well that's no big deal. I just won't be able to do the screw up as tightly. Right, I think what I'm going to do now is plug this in, be very careful of where I touch it, and just test that the trigger actually works and it does make the wire feed spin. Okay, I've plugged it in. I'm going to turn it on, being very careful not to touch anything inside here. Okay, fans on. That's what usually happens. I'm just going to pull the trigger and see if the wire feed starts. No. There is a relay clicking, which tells me the trigger is working because it knows when I'm pulling the trigger. I wonder what happens if I fiddle with a wire feed speed knob. No, nothing. Is there something I've forgotten to connect? I was doubting this connection that I've just trapped, but that must be working because it knows that I'm pulling the trigger. Has the wire speed motor jammed or just knackered? Sometimes when you disturb something that's been working for a long time and is actually quite old, it can actually kill it. I don't want to touch it though. Ah, right, okay. One of the buttons on the front was like switched halfway. Brilliant. Right, so that's the wire feed working. Okay, I'm going to turn this off, feed some wire through it and put it back together, I guess, and do some test welds. Okay, I've fed the wire through, it went through no problem at all. I've cleaned up this piece of box section and let's test and see what happens. Well, it works. And I mean, I'm not the best welder ever. I don't even claim to be a good welder. I can stick metal to other pieces of metal. But that's working as well as it ever did. Let's just turn the wire speed up a little bit. Yeah, I mean, that's perfectly usable. Good. So there we go. I've got a working welder again. And like I said, this torch was really, really cheap. So, I mean, it works, but it's not going to be amazing, but at least it's working again. I'm not too happy about this heat shrink-esque cable sheath, but like I said, it was cheap. So eventually I would like to do a Euro torch conversion on this welder. But until then, this setup's going to work absolutely fine. And like I said, I'm not the world's best welder anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So that's it for this week. If you enjoyed tinkering around with me, there's plenty more where this came from. There's videos up here and here. And if you enjoyed those as well, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you again on the next one.